Alright, hey everyone, this will be my video on rationalizing monomial denominators. Hopefully it'll be a quick one, because this isn't too complicated, but it sounds complicated. Rationalizing monomial denominators. All that means is it's actually really simple. I've got a first problem for us here, 1 over the square root of 2. So we know that the top part is the numerator, and the bottom part of the fraction is the denominator, and unfortunately, something that you'll learn in algebra and you just have to remember it for a long time is you can't have a square root in the denominator or like a 0, It's just one of those rules, and if I'm being completely honest, I don't know exactly why you can't have a square root in the denominator. It's some rule that it makes it harder to compute or something, like harder to add it up or divide. I don't know. But the deal is you can't have a square root in the bottom of a fraction in the denominator. So you have to rationalize it. And that just means turning it into a number that is not a square root. So how do we do that? I'm going to write it over here. I'll write it in a different color. 1 over square root of 2. Let me show you how you're going to rationalize it. And this will work with every square root in the denominator pretty much. We're going to multiply it by 1. So it sounds kind of weird, but when you multiply anything by 1, it is itself, right? So another thing you have to remember is when you divide anything by itself, it is 1. So just hang with me. I'm going to write square root of 2 over square root of 2. So square root of 2 over square root of 2 is 1, right? Because you're dividing something by itself, so that's 1. And when you multiply anything by 1, so when you're multiplying this by 1, then you get itself. So this is the same thing as what we started with, because you're just multiplying it by 1. So, but the reason I did that, you'll see, is when we multiply it through, on the bottom, you're going to have square root of 2 times the square root of 2. And on the top, you're going to just have 1 times the square root of 2. And obviously 1 times the square root of 2 is just the square root of 2. And on the bottom, we have square root of 2 times square root of 2, which you should know is just 2. Because we're basically saying the square root of something times the square root of something. So the square root of something squared. It just cancels out, So you get rid of that square root sign since you're already multiplying it by itself. I mean, I guess one way to think about it could just be square root of 2 squared. That's what that is right there. So when you have the square root of something and square it, they just kind of cancel, But you don't have to think about it that way. That's just one way for me to explain how we did that. But let me just explain to you why I did that, because now our final solution over here that we just got has no square root in the bottom. It's got a square root in the top, which is fine, but just nothing in the bottom. So the way that you are always going to be able to get it is multiplying it by multiplying your square root by what's in the bottom. So we want to have it multiplied by itself so that we can do that and get it to not be a square root. So if this was square root of 3, then instead of it being square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over square root of 2 that we're multiplying by, it would be square root of 3 over square root of 3. And I hate that I kind of spoiled it, but I'm having one more problem for you guys. It's going to be 2 plus the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. And if you want, you can pause this video and go ahead and solve it, but that's not extremely necessary. I'm going to go ahead and work through the answer for you. So obviously, like I kind of spoiled for you, we're going to be multiplying it by square root of 3 over square root of 3, because we want to get rid of that square root. So this is the same as, let's see, 2 plus square root 3 times square root 3 over square root of 3 squared. We know the square root of 3 squared is just going to be 3 because they cancel. And then on the top, don't forget, this is important, that since this is one group and this is one group, you're going to have to multiply everything, multiply that square root of 3 by everything using the distributive property, which you should know by now. So square root of 3 times square root of 3 gets us 3, and the 2 times square root of 3 just gets us 2 square root of 3. So 2 square root 3 plus 3. So that's our final answer, 2 square root 3 plus 3 all over 3. That's how you rationalize denominators with like a square root. So yeah, that's all for this video. I'll see you next time.